Hi, welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan, and I'm still on location at the residence of Bishop O'Connell here in Lawrenceville, Princeton, right on the borderline here.
Everybody wants to have a Princeton address,
Well,
but I think it's
you got
actually
it.
Lawrenceville.
And we had a show with Bishop the last time, and he's gracious enough to kind of be with us again today. So welcome again, Bishop, to our show.
Thanks, Monsignor.
So great to have you. Listen, I know when we talked a little bit on the side, you were talking about, we mentioned about St. John's and also Catholic University, which are two great places. And growing up where I grew up, you know, St. John's was always this big, powerful basketball.
Where did you actually grow up?
Jersey City.
Oh, Jersey City, yeah.
And in fact, when I went to pharmacy school, I was going to go to St. John's, but I ended up going to Fordham. So.
Yeah.
So I guess the Jesuits had a little bit.
Well,
more,
you're ecumenical.
You're
ecumenical.
But you know, they used to call themselves. Now they call themselves the Red Storm. And you said something about you knew why the name.
Well, they used to be the Red Men for years and years and years.
Ah, so.
And what happened was, someone had written to the president. I was the dean at the time, to Father Harrington, the president of St. John's, wonderful man, and suggested to him that maybe this was not a good thing to highlight the Red Men, you know, as an affront to the Native American. So, of course, Father Harrington immediately, very sensitive to the issue, he brought it to his council and his advisors, and they made a decision. And they had a bit of a contest to try to rename the team. So they came up with this idea of calling it the Red Storm. And, of course, all the alumni were so used to the Red Men, they were not happy about the change, you know, but, you know, that's news today. Tomorrow they're on some other thing that they weren't happy about or concerned about. So I remember the press conference. I forget what was happening, but we had scheduled a press conference in Manhattan to announce the new name, and there was something else happened, so the press didn't cover it as much. But Lou Carnesecca, the great legendary coach, one of the press who were there, said, "Why did you choose? You know, the mascot now would replace the Native American was kind of a horse, a very powerful horse, you know." And they said, "Well, why did you choose a horse?" And Lou, without missing a beat, of course, "You love this guy, you know." He goes, "Come on, everybody loves horses." That was an easy one. Everybody loves horses. Great story.
If they get in the Final Four, they don't call what the nickname
they
is.
don't, that's right.
Once they get in the Final Four.
You know, when I was at St. John's, and we would have trips for fundraising or whatever, public relations trips, you know, I always hated to talk after Lou Carnesecca. I always try to work it so that I would be the first to talk, because he would just bring the house down, and everybody loved him. You know, I'd get up there, blah, 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 and he'd get up, and people just loved him, you know, and he'd be there in his sweater, you know, one of his sweaters.
That sweater was the famous sweater.
Yeah, and you know, he
had a claim that he wore the same sweater most of the games.
Well, he had a collection of sweaters, but he had, you know, very, very similar sweaters. Actually, you know, a couple of years ago, someone broke into his house. Can you imagine? And took the sweaters and took a lot of the memorabilia from over the years. Yeah, that's terrible.
That is awful.
He's such a great guy.
That's awful. Take my money, but don't take my sweaters or my father's
my
watches.
memories. Try to take the memories. You know.
That's right.
But he and his wife Mary are still going strong at St. John's.
Yeah, that's terrific. Those legends are just wonderful, just wonderful. They really are mountain people. They're terrific. You know, we talked about your appeal that hopefully I'm sure you wanted to be very successful, and we all wanted to be very successful for Catholic education. And I think you also have you would like out of the appeal to maybe do something with vocations and seminarians, and to see how we can't maybe increase that love of God through the priesthood and various ways of ministries?
Yeah, we need to do it. The appeal itself focuses, as I say, you know, special emphasis will be on education, but many of the other ministries, you know, we couldn't do a lot of what we do if it wasn't for the appeal. Yeah. You know, and as I say to people, you know, who else can you turn to? You have to turn to your own people and ask them to be generous and sacrifice. But part of the education that we support through the appeal is the education of our seminarians. We're very fortunate. We have 37 seminarians right now. And this year I'll ordain 6 deacons to the priesthood in June. And I'm very excited to be with them. I'm taking them on retreats. It's the first time they've had a priesthood retreat in the diocese for the deacons being ordained. So I'm going to give the retreat with them, taking them on retreat. I'm really excited, enthusiastic about that. But we need vocations. A good priest like yourself, a good pastor, we need someone who's going to be ready to step up when you're ready to step aside, when you're ready to take the retirement that you deserve, And we want priests to be able to continue to serve, to keep the Eucharist, to keep the parishes going, to keep that community alive. And that's what the priest does, the pastor does. He vivifies and brings to life the parish and what it means to be part of a Catholic parish. We need priests, we need vocations, we need sisters, we need religious women to continue to do the social ministries and all the great things that they've done for hundreds of years in our country.
There's parts of that I don't know if our folks realize. They see us work hard, but I think they don't realize that we need a break, and I don't mean vacation break.
Sure.
I'm talking about a break to pray more, a break to study more, a break to kind of enliven yourself more, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, when priesthood gets less numbers, you just don't have, it gets harder to do that.
No one will criticize a priest for praying.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll criticize a priest for going to Florida, or they'll criticize a priest for taking or the kind of car he drives, or whatever, or the house he lives in. But no one will criticize a priest who needs time to pray. And because that's what it's all about. That's the heart of what we do as priests. We pray and we lead the community in prayer. And we need to be able to draw others to follow the example of the thousands and thousands of priests who came before us in this country, in all the dioceses and all the parishes, who are just wonderful, wonderful, good men. And I say this to these young men. I say, think about the priest who means the most to you in your life. What is it that attracts you to that priest? What is it that makes you pay attention to that priest? And then my next question is, can you do that? Can you be that? As I've said before so many times in so many places, it's just a question that some of these young people, they're all out there. When I go to say Mass in a parish, I usually don't leave the church without putting in a pitch for vocations. They're out there, they just need to be asked. I tell you something. I was at St. Anne's in Lawrenceville for an event. And, you know what it was? It was our priest's day of recollection in Advent.
Sure.
So I'm coming out of the parish hall there. And of course I'm all dolled up in my bishop's robes. And this young man comes up to me out of the blue. And he just said to me, "Are you the bishop?" I looked at myself and I said, I'm dressed this way.
I hope so.
It's not Halloween. And I said, "Yes, I'm the bishop." He said, "I want to be a priest and I don't know what to do."
Wow.
Out of the blue.
Wow.
The next day,
Wow.
in another parking lot at the mall, a young man saw me and recognized me as the bishop and came up to me and said the same thing. So maybe I have a ministry to parking lots, I don't know, but the vocations are there.
But isn't that where you meet people?
It's where you meet people.
The
people we want are the normal, good, everyday people.
Yeah.
They're out there and they have
I've
so much to
often said to
offer.
other priests in many different ways, nobody flies in the window.
Yeah.
Where they're going to meet you.
Right.
They're going to meet you out on the ball field. They're going to meet you in the parking lot. They're going to meet you in the mall.
Yeah.
But they got to meet you with a little bit of joy.
That's it, and they've got to see you, and that's why it's so important. Like, priests who stand outside the Mass on Sunday to greet the people. And a lot of times, a lot of people don't say hello to you. They're in a hurry. They're going to breakfast.
A lot do, though.
But a lot do.
A lot do.
And that's a great opportunity for you to make eye contact, especially with young people or people who are thinking about. But if you say it every once in a while from the pulpit, from the altar, you'll get people thinking.
Sure.
And I think a lot of times you have to encourage the family, especially the parents, especially in these days. We've been through some hard times in the Catholic Church in our country, as you know, and with respect to with clergy, to let them know that it is a good life and it is a holy life.
And I think most people know that.
I think that's
really
so true.
do.
I
They
think
really
that's
do.
very true. It's a minority.
When you were talking like this, I go all the way back to my retreat right before ordination. And I remember the priest said, "Remember, gentlemen," he said, "people can understand a lot of things." He said, "What they're not going to understand is if you're not charitable."
That's
He
true.
said, they expect us. They said we can make mistakes and we can mispronounce this, or maybe don't preach well this Sunday or that Sunday. He said, but they don't understand if we're not charitable.
Never
forgot that.
It's amazing. It's a very good point. I think perhaps one of my flaws or one of my imperfections is, I'm very direct, and people ask me a question. If it's a yes or no, I give them a yes or no, and sometimes they ask questions and they maybe don't want an answer, or they're not expecting an answer, and sometimes you can come across as a little bit abrupt. It's not a lack of charity, but they can interpret it that way. So what you're saying is very, very true. You have to be very, very careful, especially when you're a pastor or the bishop. Your words are heavier, and they carry some weight.
They carry a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And when you talk about meeting people outside, just this past summer, I guess I gave a story that I gave a year ago or something. And a fellow passing by said, "What's this, summer reruns?" I said, well, it's the same gospel. I said, so, why can't I tell the same story?
The fact that he remembered is a good sign. That's a good sign.
That's right. But you have a great concern about religious life, and I do think the Spirit's there, and I think an awful lot is happening, and I think people are yearning, and people want to do something with their life too.
Absolutely.
And maybe how about the laity, Bishop? I know the church now is spread it out. I mean, in my own priesthood, I don't know if you had these thoughts, but I look back at my priesthood and say, maybe it's changed 2 or 3 times. And not that it changed drastically, but the notion of how we entered and what the priest did back then and what the priest does now and how laity help and how so many other people help. How do you see that envisioning as the church grows into the future?
Yeah, I think it has changed. It has, and I think it's changed several times. I was very young, just beginning in the seminary when the Vatican Council was finishing, and we've just actually the Vatican Council was over, but we were just starting to feel the effects of it. I know, talking to some priests who were ordained at that time, it was the most exciting time in their life. They speak about it as though it happened yesterday with such enthusiasm. And whenever there's a Vatican Council, the dust is generated, and but it takes they say in church history, it takes about 40 years for the dust to settle. Well, it's been 40 years since the Vatican Council, and the Vatican Council, what it did, I think, for the church is it called forth kind of a sharpening of focus on the roles within the church, the role of the bishop, the role of the priest. It reintroduced the permanent diaconate, which, as you know, is very prominent here in the Diocese of Trenton, but also very important, it gave permission for the laity to act upon their baptismal commitment, because they share with us the responsibility for the church to teach, to govern, and to make holy, to sanctify, the threefold mission of Jesus Christ and the threefold mission that the church has and that we all participate in, each according to our appropriate and unique roles. But I mean, the church is the laity. If you looked at the numbers, we're a minority part of it. Our service in the church is a service of leadership of the community. But the service of the laity is to make the community happen. And so they exercise, especially, Monsignor, in the family. In the family, so much happens in the family, so much potential for good, prayer in the family, passing on the faith in the family, just giving good example. A lot of families, they don't want to be the holier than thou, But it's important that parents let their children see that religion and religious faith, spirituality, that the church is important. It's something important. It should be part of their lives. And that's the primary thing that they hand on, to give the kids opportunity for some religious education, whether it be in the Catholic schools or some of our wonderful programs. That's so important. And then these youngsters become 11 as they grow into adults. They become citizens of the world, 11 in the world, and they take on, they have an interest in doing. As you've said to me before, all you have to do is ask people to participate, and they will, because they want to. They want to be part of a church that's alive. And so
we have a priest in the diocese, Father Mark Crane, who
oh yeah, Mark.
Actually, when I got to St. Paul's, he was sitting out in a pew, and I asked him to do something. And
He's a lawyer, wasn't he?
No, he actually was the weatherman.
Oh, wow.
There's another gentleman that's...
Am I thinking of something else?
Yeah. But yeah, so, and he says, you know, I might still be in the pew if you didn't ask me to do something.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what you're saying, you know, you got to be just aware that people are really willing to do things. And of course, I'm a big man to say, and this might be my age talking like this, but you know, you got to eat together. You got to really eat in the family. You got to sit, because that's where you tell the stories. That's where you get the excitement going, and that's where you can come home and say, you know what Father said today, or you know what the sermon was about today, and all of a sudden you're talking about faith and you're living that faith, and it's a marvelous, experience.
The witness of your life. Yeah. You know, it's so.
And, you know,
important.
Bishop, I can tell you, just even in my experiences with lay people, so many of them enliven us. You know, they really do. You know, they really do love us.
Talk about teaching.
Yeah.
How much we learn.
Yeah.
How much we learn in our ministry from those to whom we minister.
And it's amazing. Maybe it makes it a little harder to preach because they read a lot, they do a lot, so you got to do a little homework yourself.
As you say, you know,
okay.
Part of the change that we've encountered is, you know, it's a much more highly educated audience, congregation. And so you can't just get up and give them the same old thing.
That's why I think we have to continue our education.
Absolutely.
You know, you just can't get ordained. There's, whether it's a formal or informal, there's got to be ways that we can just keep ourselves reading, talking, sharing, praying.
And priests being together, the fraternity of the priesthood is not simply a social thing. And I think the social part of this is very important, that priests be together and spend time together. But also to be in conversation with priests and asking questions and what have you read, what have you learned, where have you been? I mean, it doesn't have to be a formal classroom setting. It can be done, and most frequently is done, as you said, at the table. When you're sitting with a couple priests or you're having a Coca-Cola or whatever.
And I don't know about other fellows, and maybe I'm telling you a little bit about myself, but you know, when someone else kind of says, gee, did you read this? You know, you kind of like say, man, I want to go read this. Yeah. I think that's what challenges us to kind of share with each other, but to grow. And whether it's in education, whether it's in sports, no matter what it is, I think we're always being called to grow more and more and more.
One of the things that people do for me as a bishop, you know, people send me books.
Yeah.
You know, most days I say, or enough with the books already, I can't keep up with what I have. But every once in a while you'll get something that'll really kind of catch your attention. And it's such a good thing, and you want to pass it on to other priests and give them a chance to read and to share it. Yeah, it is so true what you say.
To encourage Catholics, any ideas of, I know we're talking about how many come to church and the body and blood of Christ is so important to feed us. Any thoughts of how you like to, besides maybe get some priests together to talk and see what we might have some ideas? Because I wonder, like when we were talking maybe the last time, with so many youth today, you know, the wonderful gift of education and Catholic all of the universities, you know, they're at a great age because they want to be challenged, they want to think, they want to talk. How do you see that development out of the universities? How do we can touch that group to carry us on to the next generation, especially with communication that's changing before our eyes?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that ties together all the aspects of the question, I think, is the media. Yeah. We live in an age where the media has taken on such great importance and is so formative in terms of people's point of view or opinion, for better or for worse. And so we're missing something important if we don't take advantage of opportunities just like this to really speak the truth, to speak the Gospels, to speak the values that we hold so dear as Catholics. But we've got to link into technology. You know, the social networks, Facebook, Twitter, all of these things are very, very important for the diocese to have that connection. I've spoken with our own publications office and said how, you know, the diocesan newspaper doesn't need to be the biography of the bishop. The diocesan newspaper needs to be the medium on which important information can be shared, thoughtful information can be shared, substantial information can be shared. Because the fact of the matter is most people, after 8th grade or after confirmation or after high school, That's the end of their former Catholic education. And other than what they hear, however they're nourished in their parishes through the homilies, there aren't a whole lot of other opportunities. And so the Catholic newspaper becomes very, very significant. But using the diocesan website as a tool for education, trying to get email distribution lists together, encouraging the parishes to do this. There's so many things, so many exciting avenues that are just opening up to us that it kind of blows your mind when you think about all the possibilities of ways for us to reach out and touch the faithful and draw them in. So I think you're onto something very important.
Especially, I think, when at least the things you hear or read, that the younger generation can do 2 or 3 things at one time.
Multitasks.
Like, you know, so that I often wondered, even preaching-wise, how do we use some of these newer tools that we have, whether it's to do a PowerPoint at once in a while. I don't think we should get up there and be the magicians all the time, but to be able to kind of, because there is a visualness. I mean, we can touch different parts of the gifts that God gave us. We can hear and see and speak and touch. I think all of those gifts can be utilized.
It's the best way to learn. They say, what's the most enduring way that we learn is engaging as many senses as possible in the learning experience. I used to joke with the faculty, and I used to say 75% of what you say in the classroom will go in one ear and out the other and will never be remembered. But what will always be remembered is the way in which you presented the message.
So true.
When we think about the great teachers that we had, or the great pastors, or the great sisters that were a part of our life, what was it about them?
Right.
There was something. It wasn't necessarily anything they said, or a great sermon, or great class. There was something about them that just drew us in. Now what we have to do is got to link the technology with that so that we don't, divorce ourselves, so to speak, from real life encounters and real life contacts.
And then couple that with the holiness. I think people that are teaching also have to, especially in our schools, I think the kids have to see us living a life that's also the same as that we're speaking.
Kids can smell a phony a mile away.
Yeah.
And so what you say and what you speak about and what you hold out as important for their lives, you've got to live it yourself, because
Which I guess is another aspect of your idea of education, is to maybe help the teachers themselves, continue their education a little bit, or even get their Catholic faith, involved in their own subjects and subject matters, because years ago I think the priests and the sisters had, at least the teaching priests and sisters, had more time in a sense to study every night. Well, lay people got families and other things that they're doing.
Sure.
But I think we can help them an awful lot in those areas.
Everything is relational. Everything in life is relational. And I think one of the things we have to do, we have to be conscious to it, especially as priests, of encouraging people. We a lot of times, we're not thanked, and we're not looking for thanks. So much of what we do is thankless, behind the scenes, supportive people or contribution. But we can never forget to thank and encourage others and to express support for others in our context that we have as priests and certainly as bishops.
When we talk in that context, Bishop, to thank, that again goes back to the Eucharist to me.
Absolutely.
To make sure that Eucharist is a healing part of the world. I don't know how we can even do that better. I think we do it very well. But to be able to let the Eucharist be alive, and not just, it's 50 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever it happens to be, but to allow that to be a real part of our very fabric of our life.
Well, that's what the word Eucharist means. Eucharistia, the Greek word for thanksgiving. That's what it's all about. If you think about our Lord and the way that he went about some of his public works, the Pharisees, the scribes, the elders, the leaders, the religious leaders of his day were very critical of him when he would say or do something. Who are you to say that? And where did you get that? And how? But our Lord said it in the Gospel. Which is easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk. But to prove that I've got the authority, I'm going to say both: forgiveness, healing, and revelation. That's when we see
I
it.
guess I always like the first breakfast, I call it, you know. You know, when after the resurrection, they're out fishing. He says, "Come on, fellas, let's have a little something." And what's the question? Do you love me? Yeah. Then go feed.
Yeah.
Go feed my. You know,
That is so true.
Priesthood's a marvelous gift to us. You know, any experience that kind of like, you know, was a little difficult time in a sense that you might remember to maybe help other priests to think about it. I mean, we've all had probably sometimes. Although I must admit that I've been blessed. I can't. If you asked me that question, I probably would sit there and say, I can't think of too many things. But you know, or maybe sometimes we think about the joy of the priesthood, some experience, the happy memory of priests.
Yeah, I can speak to both.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the challenges or the disappointments. I guess, you know, I can think of a couple things. Going through the seminary, seeing guys that I thought would make great priests leave. You know, it weighed on my heart because I would say, geez, he's so much more talented than me and he's got so much more to offer, and he leaves and I'm the guy that stays behind. What am I? You know, that's always a discouraging thing. Or, you know, I had a young priest recently come to me and say that he wanted to leave the priesthood, you know, and I don't know the priest, you know, I'm only here for a short while, but I felt such a heaviness after he left because you know, he's a beautiful, wonderful guy, and I just feel you know, we're diminished a little bit.
How about the joy?
Yeah, well, we'll get to the joy. The death of my father was a difficult thing as a priest, to encounter that and to watch him. Even now, as my mother, as she has her own difficulties as she ages, you know, to see her kind of shrinking and just she's not the same, and to watch her life as it changes so radically, and you know, those are hard things to experience because you're still a son, even though you're a priest, or in my case a bishop, and you know, you feel, oh, I have all this surrounding me. The joys really come, I think it maybe sounds like a cliche, they come from meeting people. People bring you joy. You know, people just, I mean, it's rare that I go through a day without laughing and talking with people about something great in their life. And so I think becoming a priest was important to me, and that was a joyful day. Becoming a bishop was a very joyful day. Thanks to so many who made that possible.
But I do think it's the people.
People.
It's the people, and you know, even when you deal with them and their sorrows and their joys, I mean, the fact is you can really see God in the communication and the love between us and people and them back and forth.
You know, when you reflect on your life as a priest, you know, if you are reflective, you know, you can see so many things in your life that enable you to relate so easily with other people.
It is, and I think we have to do almost another show together, Bishop.
Yeah, family stuff and things that go on, you know.
God love you. Thanks, Bishop, so much. The Catholic Corner, another beautiful show and a beautiful bishop with us. Play with us, talk with us, keep your families alive in faith and love, and thank you very much. Thanks.